He had ordered Domino's every day for 10 years until the staff realized something was wrong. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to M&R TV and hit the bell so you never miss any upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. Kirk Alexander was the most loyal customer a fast food restaurant could ever ask for. Every day for 10 years, he had ordered Domino's pizza to his home, befriending his local chain's employees in the process. But one day, out of the blue, something happened that was so uncharacteristic that it frightened them. And the restaurant staff knew they had to investigate. Did they figure out the truth too late? Kirk Alexander was a 48-year-old man who lived all alone in his secluded home in Salem, Oregon. Amongst his passions, he had a major love in his life that he shared with so many other people: pizza. But not just any pizza would do for Kirk. He was a Domino's man through and through. In fact, Kirk loved Domino's so much that he bought dinner from there every day for nearly 10 years. Not only that, but he would order it from the same exact Domino's branch. So when he mysteriously stopped ordering from them, the workers grew a little worried about him. Something weird was going on, and they were going to find out what it was. As Domino's general manager Sarah Fuller explained, he orders every day, every other day. His order pops up on the screen because he orders online. This was something that Fuller and her co-workers had long grown accustomed to. Receiving orders from Kirk became a regular occurrence. Fuller continued, "So we see it come across the screen and we're like, oh, Kirk's order." Like most routines in life, it became second nature for them to expect Kirk's nightly request. This is why they were so alarmed when the orders stopped coming in. What was going on? Was everything okay with their loyal paying customer? Before jumping to any crazy conclusions, the Domino employees decided to consider all the possibilities. They reasoned that Kirk was probably away on vacation or on a business trip, or perhaps even visiting his family. They thought up all kinds of scenarios that could justify him not ordering like he had always done. Eventually, they decided to wait it out and see if anything would change. But as the days kept passing by, no orders from Kirk came in. The Domino's employees began to grow extremely worried. That was when they considered yet another possibility, one that made them even more uneasy. But there was no way it could be true. Sarah Fuller and her fellow employees at Domino's started to consider something that was within reason, yet seemed totally illogical nonetheless. Was it possible that Kirk had simply gotten sick of their food? Was it something they did wrong that drove him away? He'd been ordering from there forever, so he obviously proved that he enjoyed it for long enough. So what changed? The employees wondered if maybe Kirk was simply tired of eating pizza. Perhaps he was thinking about going on a diet, and separating himself from Domino's was the best way to accomplish that. But while these theories were intriguing, there were a few problems and some alarming realities they were about to learn. The fact of the matter is, Kirk didn't just order pizza at Domino's. He would indulge in a myriad of tasty items from the menu. As Sarah Fuller explained in an interview, Kirk is a very well-known customer, but he doesn't have a regular order. He'll order anything from pasta to pizza to sandwiches or wings. It's never the same thing every time. Therefore, they figured he couldn't possibly be getting sick of their beloved fast food chain. Kirk had always loved all the various things on the menu, and it wasn't like him to simply disappear into thin air. So they felt that drastic steps needed to be taken. Finally, an executive decision was made that someone should go check on Kirk. This may seem odd to some people, considering none of these Domino employees were family members or even close friends with Kirk, but they weren't thinking about that. They had a feeling something was wrong, and they were going to act on their gut instinct. So Tracy Hamblin, one of the Domino's workers, actually drove over to Kirk's house to see what was going on there. When he arrived, he saw from the outside that the lights were on. Not only that, but he heard the television playing as well. Curious, Hamblin inched his way closer. As Domino's employee, Tracy Hamblin edged his way towards Kirk's front door. He had no idea what lay on the opposite side of it. Both the lights and the television were on, but considering the circumstances, that didn't necessarily mean that everything was fine. He started knocking on the door, but no one answered. Hamblin continued to knock, but was met with the same unfortunate result, so he decided to call Kirk's cell phone as he stood outside his door. However, this didn't work either, as the phone rang and rang with no answer. That's when Hamblin knew there must be a problem. He rushed back to the restaurant. Tracy Hamblin rushed as fast as he could back to Domino's to tell them what happened. He had hoped to find Kirk there alive and well, but all he got was silence, no reply from Kirk's cell phone, and no answer at the door. This was so unlike Kirk's character, as he was always friendly and didn't seem like the type not to answer his phone or his door. However, one of the employees noted that Kirk's health wasn't always in the best shape. In fact, that's the reason that he always wanted his pizza delivered straight to his door. As Hamblin got back to the restaurant, he told them all what happened. Hamblin returned to the Domino's and told his colleagues what had happened. Hearing the strange circumstances made Sarah Fuller, the general manager, far more concerned. As she told Coin 6 News, "We saw the last order was 11 days ago. We knew something wasn't right. That wasn't normal at all." The evidence was starting to pile up, and there was no escaping the fact that something was wrong. But just how bad was whatever had happened to their loyal customer? And furthermore, what were the Domino's staff going to do about it? That's when they realized what had to be done. Naturally, the frightened employees of Domino's decided to call the local sheriff. As far as they were concerned, things were far out of their hands, and they wanted to be sure there were professionals on the case. So employee Tracy Hamblin picked up the phone, dialed 911, and explained the unsettling situation to the cop on the other end of the line. "Well, I need some help on what to do. It could be an emergency," the worker said frantically. "This is Domino's Pizza, and we had a customer that usually orders like every night from us, and he hasn't ordered in 11 days. The police took down all of the details and immediately sprang into action. The local officers rushed out to where Kirk lived to see what was going on there. As they arrived to his home, they also noticed that the lights were on and that the television was playing. So the first thing they did was knock on the door and scream Kirk's name. They expected to hear silence, but instead they heard a strange, muffled noise. As they listened closely, the officers realized that what they were hearing was a man crying out for help. They then bashed through the front door and looked for Kirk. What they found was poor Kirk, alive but lying on the floor in desperate need of assistance. After the officers found 48-year-old Kirk lying on the floor calling for help, they immediately called up an ambulance, which whisked him away to the nearest hospital. As Kirk lay there in the hospital bed, the doctors started analyzing him and tried to figure out what was wrong. It appeared to be that Kirk had suffered from a stroke, which explained his inability to get off the floor in his home. Thankfully, the doctors were able to stabilize Kirk momentarily, but they were certainly not out of the woods. He had been without attention for far too long. Would desperate measures need to be taken to save his life? The doctors were worried because there was no witness of Kirk's accident, and therefore they had no idea how long he'd been lying there suffering from a stroke. But like diligent professionals, they buckled down and tried to save their patient to the best of their abilities. Eventually, after a long and painful wait, the doctors announced that Kirk was going to be just fine. Understandably, the Domino staff was ecstatic to hear this amazing news. As Sarah Fuller emotionally stated, "We're like a family here, and we were glad we were able to do something to help. We hope he's able to fully recover from this." Nonetheless, the Domino's workers were adamant about one thing. After it became clear that Kirk was going to make a full-scale recovery, everyone wanted to label the Domino's workers as heroes. However, the Domino staff were having none of it. They didn't want to accept the idea that they were somehow heroic, because in their minds they had done what any decent person would have done in their stead. As General Manager Sarah Fuller explained, "I think we were just doing our job, checking in on someone we know who orders a lot. We felt like we needed to do something." But as humble as Fuller and her fellow employees were, the media wasn't about to let this go. The local news network started catching wind of this inspiring story. They wanted to throw a spotlight on these Domino's workers. Soon, it wasn't just the local networks, but also major news organizations. The story was blowing up by the day, and local Domino's workers were basking in a hero's glow that they hadn't asked for. The more popular the story got, the more regular folks started wondering how Kirk was recuperating after his terrible ordeal. It was one thing to make a full recovery. It's another to adapt back into your regular routine, and people wanted answers. Soon, the story of Kirk and his local Domino's got so big that even Good Morning America talked about it on their show. Sarah Fuller, along with the Domino's assistant manager, Jenny Cyber, were interviewed on television so that they could talk about everything that had happened and possibly give insight as to Kirk's current status. As they recounted the unsettling events that had taken place and how they figured out something was wrong, the host commended them both for their courage to follow their gut instincts. But what the hosts really wanted to know was how Kirk was doing. The viewers waited anxiously for the answer, and they were shocked by what they said. Since Sarah Fuller and Jenny Cyber had already visited Kirk at the hospital a total of 3 times, they gave the viewers the answers they were waiting for. Cyber explained that the first time they had visited Kirk, he seemed out of it and he was barely able to speak. In fact, Kirk was only able to respond to yes or no questions. By the second day, things had gotten a little better, but still not great. However, it was on the third day that Kirk finally looked like himself again. The doctors moved him to the rehabilitation wing, and his progress looked excellent, but the surprises were far from over. The team at Good Morning America had some exciting surprises for the crew over at Domino's. Due to their courage, keen attention to detail, and willingness to act, they decided to reward them with a special present. And Robin Roberts, the host of the show, told Fuller and Cyber the meaning of the gift as well. Roberts said, "Since you guys are superheroes, we're gonna send you to Captain America Civil War." Roberts then explained that the entire Domino's staff had just been gifted with movie tickets to see Captain America in theaters, as tribute to the heroic acts they had performed. Yet even after this kind gesture, the story was not yet over. It's only logical that at some point the story was going to make its way to social media. Once everything started to blow over, the officers over at Marion County Sheriff's Office, who had discovered Kirk immobilized on the floor of his home, wrote a glowing post on Facebook about the heroic actions of the Domino's workers. They especially praised Tracy Hamblin, the Domino's driver, who was the first one to see if anything was wrong at Kirk's house. Part of the Facebook post said, "Thanks to the quick actions of Mr. Hamblin, Mr. Alexander is in stable condition at the Salem Hospital." But was there any lesson to be learned in this story? Everyone knows that while pizza is delicious, it's not the most healthy of foods. Therefore, it raises questions of whether or not Kirk's stroke may or may not have had something to do with his excessive consumption of pizza. At the same time, it's fair to say that without the help of the Domino's workers, Kirk Alexander might not have survived his health scare. So even if the food wasn't the healthiest in a roundabout way, the fact that he ate there frequently, made friends with the co-workers, and harbored goodwill actually saved him. Kirk certainly must be thanking his lucky stars that he's still around now to talk about it.